Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tattoos with Intention podcast, where we unpack the tattoo paradigm. I'm your host, Mark Nara, and it feels really good to be back on the microphone, putting the next few episodes of this podcast together, out into the world and into your ears, because a lot's been shifting at the moment. There's a lot of attention grabbing that is rather destructive. So just remember to keep your mind clear, clean, and connected. Ask for that every day. That's what I do. And before I introduce this episode's guest, I just want to encourage anyone who's listening that resonates with any of the things that we talk about on this podcast in relation to tattoos and personal growth, that's keen on connecting with other people who are also equally invested, if not more than yourself, people who already are using their tattoos as a tool for their personal growth. If you're interested in knowing more about how to use your tattoos in a constructive way so you can connect and create a dialogue with your spirit, then I encourage you to join my private community group. It's called the Tattoo Pathway. You just go to tattoopathway.com. That's TATU. There'll be a link in the episode notes. But basically, within this space, I am seeking to bring people together in a more meaningful way so that we can feel comfortable and confident in sharing the stories that we have in our skin, so we can build a community that recognizes tattooing as a unified modern day rite of passage that's free from all of the cultural and religious ideals and ties and stigmas and dogmas. So something that's very contemporary, that honors the original intention of marking our skins, and that we can overlay with our complex and different world. We're in a very different time. So that's what's happening within that space. I'd love everyone to go into that page and request to join if you want to. Like I said, it's private, so you got to request. I'll let you in if it's a space you really want to participate in. This whole community thing's come as a spin-off from the coursework that I put together. I've taken one group through it so far, very early stages, but that's the 7 principles of tattoo philosophy. And it was so successful and so fun, and full of amazing humans that went through that first round just before COVID hit. We're going to do it again. And the community page is literally a spin-off of that. So go over, join in. I'm going to be doing a webinar on there this month that talks about the coursework in much more depth, for anyone that wants to take a place and enroll in the second course, which will run at the end of September. It's a super useful thing to do. Most people found that having a framework and language that they didn't have before to be able to understand what it is that they're going through when they get tattooed and communicate that with people around them was super useful. So jump onto the community group, get into the free webinar so you can have a bit of a download around what the course is in case that's something you want to do or work towards. You can also go to themarkofnara.com and you'll see a breakdown of the course on that page as well, and the option to enroll if you'd like. Cool. So in this episode, we talk to an artist, a mystic, and a gentleman who is all the way over in Dublin. His name's Sean Perrins. He's also known through the interweb as the Electric Hermetic. I came across some blogs that were written by Sean about 3 years ago, where he was inquiring much more deeply into the significance of marking our skin, the way he conducted his practice in his space. He was working from a studio which he founded called the Black Lodge, which still exists over in South Africa at that time. And me and Sean have been playing ping pong, email ping pong, since we first made contact 3 years ago. So it was an absolute pleasure to finally have this gentleman connected via this little wire here on this screen and have a chat. And I'm sure you'll find a whole lot of relative insights contained within this conversation. So enjoy, and I'll have all of Sean's links and contact details in the outro and in the show notes. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Okay, it's recording. Awesome. Nice. Glad we worked that out. Cool. Yeah. So thank you for making the time to have this chat, man. Do appreciate it.
No worries, dude. No worries at all. Glad to be here.
Yeah, great. So for everyone that's listening, I've just tuned in with Sean Perrins. Am I saying that correctly? Yep.
Yeah, that's correct.
Cool. And he is based over in Dublin, Ireland at the moment, at a studio called Reincarnated. So, man, we first touched in with each other in 2018. I had a look at the original message I sent you on Instagram.
Yeah.
So a couple years back now, and what originally brought me across yourself and your work was I was just cruising along on the internet, trying to dig up what there is out there around any type of intentional tattooing, because it can be a bit of an isolating thing, or it was, going back a little while. And I came across the Black Lodge page where you put up a bit of like journal work or essay writing around your practice and what you do. So that's how I came across you, but that was a while ago, right?
Man, I actually think that we spoke via email. It was before I left Joburg. So that would have been 2016, maybe.
Yeah,
I left
right.
Joburg at the end of 2016. I think we mailed a little bit before, and then we chatted on Instagram later again.
Right. So it was even later than that.
Further back.
Yeah, wow.
Further back.
Time goes quick, hey? So quick.
Say again?
I said time goes quick.
Oh, shit, man. It does, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, cool. Well, I'm glad that we're finally having this chat. It's been long awaited, but before I press record, you were saying that you feel like it's quite timely for yourself?
Yeah, for myself, man. I think when we touched base, I was in the early days of just exploring like alternative philosophies in tattooing. I was kind of dissatisfied with that kind of surface level or like consumerist tattooing. Let's call it consumerist tattooing.
Yeah.
And obviously the way that the world's going and picking up speed, it just seems to gather more and more of that towards itself. Tattooing as a whole just seems to fight consumerism more and more as more and more people get on board, and we get into the sale of tattooing. And I was just looking at it as it's just deeper, more ancient and more profound. And it was, like when you touch base with me, when I was writing that stuff, it was basically a time of reflection. I think a time of the seeds of some personal growth as well. But timely now because I went through a huge upheaval after that and moved continent.
Yeah.
And I kind of had to shelve everything. You move to a new city and you got to build a new client base and get into somebody else's shop and get to know people. But it's just started moving for me again. It's just started moving forward in quite a big way, which is nice. And then connecting like this is just feels good.
Yeah, a bit reaffirming, hey?
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's wind back to where you were at in Joburg and kind of, yeah, what was happening for you at that time that moved you towards the Black Lodge and, yeah, digging a bit more into that, what was happening in terms of the commercial stuff around you, and then personally, how your practice started to respond to that.
Yeah, I think, oh man, I don't want to be too, I can be very long winded. I don't want to be too long winded about
That's
it.
all right, man.
Yeah. But like that, the shop was the inception. I mean, I opened that shop in 2013 with my wife, um, because I wanted to get out of. I was in a very what I would call like a boutique studio,
Mm.
like and not to throw any shade at them, they were good to me. I learned a lot there, but I was feeling that sort of commercial cloud descending on the approach to tattooing. I was getting a little better at what I was doing, and I wanted to build a space free of, like, the inception of it was just a space free of politics, free of interpersonal drama, like a studio outside of the street shop model that people could just tattoo in
Mhm.
and get to grips with their craft and focus on tattooing as opposed to focusing on who they were and what everybody else was doing around you and fighting for work amongst each other and all the little dramas that come up in very sensitive artistic communities. Uh, yeah,
We are
it's like,
sensitive, aren't we?
oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think I did that. I established like a really nice space, a space where I allowed people to be autonomous, where the law was just personal responsibility. Um, and I was deepening my own studies, I call them my flaky studies, but my own sort of spiritual path at the time. So everything kind of aligned. At the time, I think around about late 2014, I was introduced to working with plant medicines.
Mhm.
Um, I'm a recovered addict, so I hadn't touched any substance in a decade before that.
Ah,
And it
yeah,
was,
power to you.
yeah, it was a huge step I spent a year thinking about it. Um, a friend of mine was serving at the time. And it was a year from when he approached me to when I kind of bit the bullet and jumped in. Um, and I guess we like in this kind of thing to say, oh, I had a calling, I was called, like,
Yeah,
I
that's the
had a vision
language. That's the
calling.
language these days.
Um, but it was actually quite the opposite, man. I was I had a vision,
Mm.
but it wasn't a pleasant vision. It was more of a wake up call, and I was kind of shown tattooing as, or rather, I was shown myself in tattooing and tattooers as a whole, and just how careless we are with what we're putting into people. And I was shown the depth and the import of what we lay into people, and how we're not just putting pictures on people, but we're literally putting everything inside people. And it all became very clear very suddenly that everything was going in my personal space, the music, the chaos, the people in and out of the studio, or whatever energy was coming in was getting snapshotted in that moment and captured in that tattoo.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when my practice started to change. It started as a personal endeavor. It was about my intention, me staying present in the moment, and starting to engage my clients in conversation around that kind of thing. But the best I could do, because not everybody is open, not everybody wants a
Yeah,
spiritual
yeah,
experience.
exactly,
Want a
exactly.
tattoo. But I felt like it was my responsibility to be mindful and to curate space for people, regardless of what they thought they wanted or didn't want. Um, it was lay in my hands to ensure that that space was held for them. The same way we hold space in ceremony, we hold space in all those kind of facets of life. Whether you're sitting and meditating, whether you're doing plant medicine, whether you're getting Reiki, a massage, anything, whether you're in therapy, You want that space to be a trusted space.
Completely, completely. I hear
Yeah,
you on that.
like,
I hear you on that. Look, I mean, I just want to say firstly that what a beautiful insight or vision to receive, and I think
yep,
I really resonate with it. Again, that's some of the language that gets used around. I resonate. I do. I feel,
yeah,
you know, I feel and have a comprehension of what you've experienced in that insight because I've had the same thing, and it's beautiful because it does really ignite that sense of responsibility
yep,
in terms of what you're doing and who you're working with. Tattooing is ceremony. That's the
yep,
that's the bit that's
exactly.
been lost, right? That's kind of
Yeah,
what's been washed out in our current practice is that reverence for it as such, you know. And
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I always say the same thing to people. Everything is being recorded in the moment. Like um, every little bit of conversation we have. That's why I try and make sure everyone's as comfortable and as safe as they can. Holding them in that space because a lot of the time things will come up that just need to be heard in the space, and recorded. So
Yep.
yeah, I see where you're at that point. And so that led to curating and opening the Black Lodge.
That was I had the Black Lodge was open. It just changed the
Okay.
way that I was operating in that space. It changed the way
Ah, I see. Yeah,
that I
yeah, yeah.
felt about that space. I had a great. I was blessed. We had a beautiful studio, huge studio. We had a little meditation room set up, which doubled as a ceremony room on the weekend.
Sounds
Um,
amazing.
we had a little private studio set up so that if anybody needed to get undressed or be in a sort of exposed environment, we had actually a couple of private spaces set up. We had a photography studio. We had a garden. Uh, we had a token dog Sundays. It
Sounds
was great.
so beautiful.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was great.
yeah.
In the heart of Johannesburg, it wasn't really. I don't think it was very common space
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
come across as a studio. Yeah.
So really like another world when people would enter, hey?
I always felt like when we opened the place, it was straight. Like I have a lot of magical study, like Western sort of esoteric tradition as a background, as like a
Yeah, I want to
sort of
dig
hobby
into that.
passion.
I want to dig into that
Yeah.
later too. But we'll set the scene.
So when I created it, part of how I created it is I imagined the studio as an entity in itself. And this was before I got to the point of working with medicines or thinking about tattooing incredibly differently. But I had created this, in my mind, I created this entity that was the shop, that was the Black Lodge, that this benevolent kind of maternal entity. And it's funny that it's like that which came first, the chicken or the egg, because when things started to coalesce and come together, I just realized that it had always been that way, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, it
Just
wasn't that
became aware of it.
it wasn't that I had to manifest it. It's that I had manifested it already, and everything just kind of slid into space. The tattooers that were working with me were just such beautiful people. Everybody was amenable to taking their practice seriously. Um, and yeah, we had something really beautiful there. I miss it. I miss it dearly. Um, Very different in the streets of Dublin.
Yeah, so tell what was the transition over to Dublin? I mean, you don't have to divulge too much of your personal story. Only share what you want. But when we were talking, you kind of said it was like quite an initiatory phase, and you ended up having to uproot and leave.
Yeah, look, like without going too deep into it, like Johannesburg is quite violent. There's a
Mm.
lot of violent crime, and we just had an experience as a shop. Actually, like my wife and my eldest daughter were there. She was 16 at the time, um, and all the guys from my shop, and we were walking out in the middle of nowhere in the country, and we got held up at gunpoint, um, and that just rocked my world. And I decided to get my kids out, bring them over here, and give them a chance at kind of like a safer teenage experience, what they had left of it. Uh, so
Completely.
it was quite sudden. We went from being, from having like a brush with crime to I was over here 3 months later. Quite sudden,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
a very sudden transition, and tattoo practice, I really did take a back shelf. It put like the perspective was, as much as the stuff was resonating with me, and pushing me to explore my practice from a different angle. Kids come first, man.
Of
Like your
course. Of
family
course.
comes first. Your family's well-being. And I went back to having to make myself financially secure above and beyond,
Yeah.
uh, trying to follow the internal pull.
Well, again, I applaud you, man. I really do. It's like, I agree. Families first. I've only got a young family. My daughter's 2.5. My son's 8 months. So yeah. How
Yeah.
how many children do you have, and how old are they?
So I've got, they are 17, 18, and 19.
Wow.
But only two of them are with me.
Okay.
So 18-year-old and a 19-year-old on this side. So
Yeah. Oh, beautiful, man. Yeah, I
yeah,
really, when I hear of other parents now, other fathers and mothers that are doing the work, it really inspires me. I've had this whole echelon of people that I was looking up to, or that were teachers that don't have that sphere of experience, and it kind of has weakened the signal a little bit, because you have to
yeah,
manage that,
yeah,
and it is the priority. You can't put yourself before that. So yeah, I applaud you on making those moves for the family first. And as I'm saying quite often these days, like, all is as it should be, right? So it's quite timely
exactly.
that
Yeah.
you're moving back into this space now. So yeah, you said you wanted to sort of get back to where you left off, and move through that backsliding process, as you called it at the time, even though it was probably necessary, right? It was
I
a
don't,
necessary thing.
yeah, like
Yeah.
if I look at it today, it's not backsliding at all. But
Right.
when you're going through the process and you know where you were and you know where you want to be, all you can do is beat yourself up on the past and go,
It
fuck,
feels
I
like
should be
it.
further.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it feels like it. But yeah, you did what you needed to do, and now you're back in a space where you've more recently started really leaning into the intentional aspect of the practice again. So getting back to that space,
yeah,
feeding back into that first insight you had around what was going on. Hey,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So what's it look like
It's
for you
interesting, man.
now? Yeah.
You're in your webinar, which it was awesome, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Your webinar last week. I thought that was super valuable for people to hear. Um, but I noticed somebody like on the sideline popped up and he asked, uh, "Oh, is anybody doing this in street shops?" I can't
Mm.
remember the name of the chap that asked,
Yeah.
uh, but it kind of shot out to me, because I don't think that I don't think that it's discussed, and it's been something I've been wrestling with over the last year, especially, is transitions, man. Like
Yeah.
how to, it's one thing to sit on. I mean, I've seen shots of your space that you had in Tasmania, which were just like beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thanks, mate.
Such a nice view, and your little setup, and the way that you serve lunch, and it was like, I think it was a little tea ceremony, and
Yeah.
man, I had the both respect, admiration, and complete jealousy, like watching you work within that space. It's great. But then it's easy to sit on that side and say, oh, this is a way to deal with tattooing. But then I mean, I'm busy moving out of it. I'm moving through a transition now.
Mm.
But then I'm thinking to people who were sitting where I was sitting in the last year, frustrated, and knowing that there's more, and knowing that there's a different approach, but being stuck in a street shop or being stuck in a shop there, it's difficult to make that space to, um, to follow this kind of practice, because I don't believe that you can do it. I don't believe that you can pull it off to its maximum potential in an uncurated space.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I agree, man.
Like,
I
yeah,
do.
you can't
Yeah.
hold
Yeah.
any kind of ceremony with people walking in and out
Well,
and
that's
random
just it's just
in and
energy
out.
management. It just comes down to the
Yeah,
fact that you're not in control of what energies entering the space, right? Not to say any energy is better or worse, but it's not contained to
No,
just what you're curating.
yeah, it's
But
chaos.
yeah, look, I think it is. It's a really important thing for us to look at because at the end of the day, you know, um, most people are going to street shops to get tattooed, and most artists are working in street shops.
Yep.
So the majority of this work that we're talking about is getting conducted in those spaces, which was kind of the catalyst for me wanting to do the webinar and do this coursework with people. So it's not even for artists; it's just so people can curate their own space to a degree.
To a degree, yeah,
Yeah,
to a better degree.
it's not going to be the same as someone coming into a private space where it's completely held as a ceremonial ground, but
Yeah,
they can for sure uh like navigate some of the pitfalls that are in shops.
exactly, exactly. I think that the one thing you can, to a point, uh, the one thing that you can curate in that space is as an artist, you can curate your own headspace.
Yes,
That
the
makes
internal space.
the internal space. Yeah, it is possible to be present and be focused and just be doing that tattoo, um, without being an asshole and being completely unapproachable and switching yourself off from your surrounds, but constantly the same way as when you meditate and pulling yourself back to your breath. It's like I'm pulling myself back to the tattoo. For me, it is pretty much like a meditation.
Yeah, totally.
Uh,
Totally.
some days it's difficult, some days it's easy. Uh,
Yeah, it depends on all the
and
variables.
trying to encourage clients to get themselves in a space where they connect with the tattoo rather than getting distracted by the fluff.
Yeah, totally. That's it's big, that education side for people getting tattooed. Like that perspective shift that you had and that I've had around what we're doing as being so valuable. I think it's about getting that perspective shift for people getting tattooed. I think that's almost more important than anything else.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's interesting. I put all that stuff up on Instagram, and it's so interesting to sit and chat to people because a lot of my clients will come in and go, "Hey, what's that about?"
Mm, mm.
And you get that sounds awesome. Sign me up. When can we book in? Um, and then you get this, you get the opposite where you can, as you speak to people, you can kind of watch the switch
Good.
turn off and they flow, like people who are just not ready to look at that from that perspective.
Yeah,
And
totally.
everything in between, people who are curious and people who want to know more. But it's been great from that perspective. It's just starting to tap into people um, in small ways. I've always looked at the transition as being this like kind of like epic voyage, something
Mm, mm.
starting and we're moving into this new phase and bells and whistles, but it's actually small shifts that need to be made. Actually,
Yeah, yeah,
tiny
totally.
shifts, opening those passageways and allowing the communication to start, allowing the conversation to start.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's very amicable for any artist that is aware of these more intricate layers of the practice to remain in and work in that space where they can help transition people into a space of understanding. You know, like
Yep.
that's where I've spent most of my time. It's only been sort of the later half where I've been in more private spaces. Um, and that's simply been because of that transitional phase. Most of my clientele have moved into a space where they're kind of requiring the private space now.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
almost in response to and um, in respect for the people I'm working on that I'm in more private spaces. You know,
Yeah,
but
that's great.
initially it's like it was very much that, yeah, real subtle incremental changes in perspective. You know, probably for myself too, like understanding more and more and more, so I could sort of step between the two spaces. But
Yeah, that's awesome to hear though. That's awesome because you almost feel like on one side you're there beckoning, like, yeah, come over here, come and check this way of doing it out. Like come and it's
mm-mm.
nice if the response is the other way where your clients are going, hey, can we go to that space instead
Yeah,
of sitting in a regular studio setup? Yeah, that's great.
yeah, yeah. But I was in a regular studio a couple of weeks ago down in Melbourne, and it was really nice to be back in that space too. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and how
yeah,
much more comfortable I was in that space. I realized that part of the thing for me was like I actually wasn't fully comfortable in my practice originally.
yeah.
You know, so like having time out and just like becoming really concrete in it meant I could go back into that studio space and be sure of it. And then the energy was different as well. So like a lot of people in that space were sort of interested in what was happening, opposed to like
Yeah.
me feeling like it was being questioned or something, you know?
Goddamn hippies.
Yeah, that type of thing. It was really good. It was really good.
Yeah.
But so like
No, I
let's
think there is
okay.
there is a degree of like ownership to how much of something is self consciousness versus confidence. The same as in tattooing. In watching somebody take down a tattoo, put on a stencil, execute something with confidence versus somebody who's self-conscious. And I think it's the same in this kind of practice is how much of that is just being willing to stand up and take whatever comes, you know. I
Yeah,
think
totally.
it's easy to be insecure about the hippie, crazy hippie shit.
Mm-mm.
Um,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I think, you know, I think it is important to have, well, because just of the time we're in, there's going to be people that are all different stages of understanding and participation in these like layers of the practice, you know, layers of intimacy with it as something that's sacred and not. And, you know, I don't know if it'll ever um, land all the way back on that extreme of everyone understanding it as something sacred, and nor do I think it needs to. Um,
no, there's space for everybody.
yeah, yeah, but I think it'll be like, you know, the intentional side of it's really starting to gain some traction, which is beautiful. You
Yeah,
know, it's happening in a lot of places. So I think it's in its infancy for our culture. You know, it's not as old as it
yeah,
is in other ones. So we got a bit of work to do, I think, in terms of like helping it take a really um, reputable form. You know.
yeah. I'm thinking about it. I've been thinking about it in terms of it's a new tradition,
Mm,
but it's not a new tradition in its essence, but it's a new tradition in its iteration, if that makes sense.
completely.
We don't have we don't have anyone to learn from. I mean, the most you could do is maybe go to the guys who are doing the magical stuff in Thailand, or you go to the islanders who have got sort of their deep tribal stories that are going down. And those people, there's still some people out there carrying those torches, but for us, especially as sort of Western folk, um, we don't have a lineage. We don't have anything to follow. So what do? You have to lay down a new tradition based on remnants of bygone days, man.
Totally. And you know, connect to that inner space, you know. Remove ourselves from you know, our lineal time and really like check in with that space that's beyond it, because I think, you know, yourself, myself, a handful of other people I've spoken to, you can really feel it where you're like, this person has had that insight. They have had that download. They've connected with something that I feel like is you know, a communication with the very essence of tattooing. The same
Yeah,
thing that all the other cultures are linked in with. And I feel like we're probably having that connection and communication so that that new iteration can come through. You know, it's like it's the energy that just helps the physical thing take form, right?
yeah, and it's interesting. It's also interesting how it's not localized. When these
Mm,
movements and these shifts kind of happen, that collective consciousness, that way that it's kind of it's beaming down on different sides of the planet simultaneously, and you're watching it spring up in different places, in different like manifesting in different ways. It's really cool.
yeah, it's beautiful. Shows how like interwoven the whole population of the planet is at the moment. As
Yeah,
much as we think we're separate, you know. But yeah, I did want to ask you about that. You know, like tradition and kind of the new things that are coming through, and then what your thoughts may be on, you know, because this happens in all areas of ceremony and healing and sacred practice. There's that potential for it to get sort of swept up into the exploitation and commercial aspect that we were talking about. That commercial cloud that sits on tattooing sits on the spiritual parts of life as well at the moment, right? You have what we call it woo woo over here, the woo woo, where people are just kind of hiding behind different terminologies and bits of aesthetic. So do you think there's what's your thoughts on that in terms of tattooing and our new spiritual way with tattooing? Where do you think the boundary is?
I think you have to compartmentalize, man. I think that unfortunately, because there's not that many people with, the people who are following an intentional practice are far more in the minority. Your chance of getting apprenticed by somebody who's going to teach you that along with tattooing are very slim. So I think that because you're talking about snake oil, I dress it up in spirituality. I give you a mediocre tattoo and I go, but it's a spiritual tattoo, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help getting an awful tattoo with great meaning. Especially if it is snake oil and it actually doesn't have too much other than burning a bit of sage and, I don't know. Imagining it it's spiritual. But I think that, and I'm pretty sure you touched on it with John as well. I devoured those two podcasts. Those are great.
Oh, good.
But the need for a technical foundation doesn't fall away. And there's no harm in learning to tattoo the old fashioned way, to tattoo under a traditional tattooer, to tattoo under somebody, with a strong technical foundation. There's nothing wrong with that, because if you're not carrying some kind of, sort of desire for technical excellence as much as you're carrying a desire to take tattooing to its sort of spiritual potential, then it's useless. It's like one is useless without the other. I don't even want to say that. A tattoo could still just be, you could still slap up on a good tattoo onto somebody and they could have a great tattoo and be happy with the result. But yeah, you can't use the spirituality as a scapegoat for bad tattooing.
Well
or
said.
Scapegoat as an excuse.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
So you have to compare. I don't think you can just wrap it all up in one package and say like, this is what you've got. I mean, I thought it was a good tattooer, like 3 years in, and 5 years in, I had to go, I don't know anything. And 10 years in, and I'm looking at myself going, man, I could still be better. Like I want to be better. And there has to be a drive for technical excellence.
Yeah.
Regardless.
How long have you been tattooing now?
So I did my first tattoo in 2008. So I will be in like my 12th year of tattooing now. But I mean, I fucked around like a good year.
Yeah. Yeah. I did my first in 2008 as well. There you go.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Look, I just want to keep riffing on that point, because I think this is very crucial for people to hear. And it's why I brought it up, because I knew you'd have a good insight on it. And, I'm again in agreement that there's almost two separate spheres of learning if you want to be doing intentional tattooing. There's the technical aspects, and then there's the spiritual knowings and technical aspects that go with it. And yeah, I think, unfortunately, and this isn't like trying to condemn anyone, but like, unfortunately, from what I see, there is a lot of intentional artists that don't have those technical foundations.
Yes.
That's just from what I'm seeing online at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it's very exciting at the moment and alluring to want to be doing that type of work. We're in a time where everyone's really drawn to their own cultivation. So they want to be in that space. And then the technical side, we both know it takes a fucking long time to learn how to do a good tattoo, and it's not pleasant. It's not the brochure of spirituality. It's the absolute opposite. It's like, completely uncomfy, like super difficult, emotional, super hard on yourself. And it takes a lot of work and dedication to the exclusion of everything else. Like, I don't think I could have technically developed my tattooing if at the same time I was doing my personal work.
I agree.
It only
I
sort of
completely
popped in
agree.
halfway through. I could do an okay tattoo, and then like letting go of that and moving into the spiritual side, I think helped the tattooing build from that foundation. But yeah, it's super important. Hey.
It is. I think that from the, you know, like if you have an intentional based practice, you have some kind of, I don't know, spiritual or I don't, I don't like to use terminology because I think terminology can isolate people. But you
Yeah.
have some
Yeah.
kind of, what do you call it? Like internal evolutionary paradigm. There's kind of, there's something going on that you're trying to become a better person,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and it is tattooing is self-defamation. And I personally am deeply flawed as a human being. But you need a practice, I guess is a better word. You need a practice outside of tattooing, something that is about your own personal development as a human being. Um, which in the long run essentially plugs into your tattooing. Because they're at some point they become indivisible. You're a tattooer and you're a human and you're a father and you're this and you're that. But everything just coalesces into that one point. And that's for me where that birthplace comes in. That like where does the need for intentional tattooing come from?
Mm-mm.
Um, Like, why does it become so prevalent? Why does it become such a pressing issue to do this rather than window dressing on your current tattoo practice? Um, there has to be some kind of need. Um, and if I dismantle intentional tattooing, what we do or what we aspire to do, or the way in which we aspire to connect with people, if I break everything down, if I mean, I can say somebody's coming to get tattooed to be empowered. I can say somebody's coming to get tattooed to deal with their trauma, or to, I can give you a list of reasons. But I think that there's some kind of fundamental healing involved. Um, and I think that if you are self-reflective and introspective enough to be brutally honest with yourself, um, if you take on any kind of role as a healer, um, you have to know what you're doing to people. You can't put something that is mediocre on somebody and say, "Hey, man, this is my gift to you." Like those two things at some point have to align, because I think it is. It's just, I mean, if I do this, uh, when I do private sessions with people, I really just want to help people. I just really want to help people have a better life experience, have a better tattoo experience. I want to help people get the most out of that experience. And even though I will say to people, and like one of the things that I keep pushing is the aesthetic is not the pinnacle. I don't mean that as in technical ability is not the pinnacle. I just mean that we are so obsessed with the fucking image and how it looks and what it looked like his tattoo, and can I get this tattoo, and can I get exactly this in my fashion? And I just want to throw that out the fucking window and say, man, why are you here? You're not here to transform yourself. You're not here to make yourself more than you are now. You're not here to fix something, to overcome something, to transcend something. Or you just want to slap something that looks cool on you, because you can do both. You really can. You can do both. But um, I forgot where we were going or where we came
No, it's
from there.
so good.
Totally.
So we're talking about throwing fashion in the bin.
Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean that's the seduction of tattooing at the moment, you know.
Yep.
This is also the entitlement of our current time. where we see something and we can have it.
Yes, I can buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always thinking about that. Like my process with people getting tattooed is quite slow. I'm really, I'm very lucky to be able to tattoo less and take my time and really feel into where people are at. And, you know, I I really tune into that side of it. And if someone's almost like, too too excited about getting it, the process without me trying to just slows down until they end up with this sort of having to be little bit more patient with things, and the timing's always right on point. But it's been real interesting to watch where it's like, um, yeah, allowing people to understand that there is that other side to it. It's not you just getting a pretty picture because you want to and you want to look like this, or because it goes with what's
Yeah.
happening for you aesthetically at the time.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like if to add to that, um, because we go back to this sort of consumerist idea that I see something or I want something and I bring my money and I buy something and I've given you my money. Um, so that's my work. But I think that actually like we take it to its pinnacle, it's like I actually need more from the client. I need the client to work, like regardless of the fact that there's an energy exchange of money for time. We take that out of the equation and we say, cool, like I'm really going to work for you, but are you going to come here and work for me as well? And for me, the work, like when I say work, it's becoming honest is very difficult. It's also what I find difficult in the street shop dynamic. And part of where I'm taking my practice at the moment, my practice is in its infancy, I would say, and I have a vision for where I'm driving at the moment. Although the road might get a bit windy along the way, um, but my first point of course is ego diffusal, because if somebody comes into a shop and sits with me, and I've just met them, it's unfair for me to expect that person to become vulnerable to a complete stranger, or even if I worked with them before, an almost stranger,
Mm.
in a scenario where there's other people within earshot. Um, it becomes very difficult. And so my first point of course is ego diffusal, and the only way to do that is like I have a meditative process that I go through with people, but it's also about just building a relationship. And in order to get somebody to be more vulnerable, you need to be equally vulnerable with them. So there's this, there's work from both sides, man. It's
Completely.
yeah,
Completely. I understand completely what you're talking about. Again, part of the catalyst for the course that I'm putting up, the course. I don't even like using that language or having it to be out in that way. It's just how we reach people at the moment. But getting people to understand that there's the work on their part. They need to be putting themselves in that position and really coming in at the same point as the artist. If they were come to see someone like yourself, so that there isn't this need to like coach as much and get them into a similar place of understanding. You can kind of meet each other where you're at straight away,
yeah,
and that work can happen.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
yeah. So I mean, let's talk about what your practice does look like right now and what that vision is that you're working towards. Because I understand it'll change and pivot as you go along. But
Yeah.
like, what's it look like now when you're working with people in private, and where do you want it to go for yourself?
So I'm pushing. Some days I feel like I'm pushing myself a little bit too far. Um, but I'm trying to push a little bit. I'm almost testing the boundaries for myself at the moment. So I do a small kind of meet and greet consultation in the shop in working hours, and I meet somebody and we put face to face. We chat a little bit about it. I explain kind of where I'm at with the way I go about things. I give them like a basic overview, see if they're comfortable, um, get the ballpark kind of money figure out of the way, deal with all that stuff up front. And then no, I basically give them the concept of intention, and having an intention during tattoo, and just the concept of being able to access what I would call like a trance state or an altered state of consciousness within the tattoo process. Um, and to harness that rather than to run away from it or try and hide from it because it comes dressed as pain. To kind of embrace that and use their intention as an anchor to push through that space if it gets difficult, or to use their intention as an anchor to meditate through that space if it's easy. So I give them the formula basically. And then at the moment I only have evenings available. It's the only way that I've found to access a practice in a street shop. And I'm talking street shop, like on average, we're like 4 to 6 artists in a really small environment. Dublin shops are tiny. So it's close quarters. So I've taken to working evenings, like 1 or 2 evenings a week. So it's I'll do my usual day, break for dinner, and usually start 8:30 in the evenings. And I start by trying simple connection, man. Just a simple putting each other at ease.
Yeah.
I used to work in low lighting. I take off like the crappy fucking neon lights, and I just set a space, like it's like a setting.
Yeah.
And then, I walk them through like a meditation. I would call it a guided meditation, but it's not really. It's just getting into a comfortable space.
Yeah.
And by I think that if you allowed somebody to take you into meditation, there's an automatic kind of letting go that happens there. And just connecting with your own breath and being in a space with somebody where I'm doing the same. I'm breathing with them.
Yeah. Totally.
And like 5 to 10 minutes, we're not breaking reality by trying to get somebody to sit still for too long. And then I invite them to chat as much as they feel freely about why are you here? Why are you here? Like, what did you come here for? What do you hope to achieve? What's going on for you, basically? Because there's always something going on for us.
Yeah.
And I found that it pretty much just comes straight out.
Yeah. Well, if you set that space.
Yeah. Pretty much comes out. It comes straight up. The part where I've set myself the challenge is we don't really discuss design or aesthetic before the time. Yeah. So to be honest, I'm finding that as tricky as the clients are finding that a little more tricky. But at the same time, I guess at the moment I'm trying to, again, subvert the aesthetic, and subvert the need for a specific aesthetic. So now we're trying to find what we're dealing with, and we're trying to find what body parts do we feel called to, which I generally find also seems to come up pretty quick and pretty easy. If it's a part of the body, if you move towards a part of the body that feels uncomfortable, like if it was in your sort of like the lower chakras and it's not somewhere that you were interested in getting tattooed, then you look at doing something that aligns with that for you, that kind of feels reflective, some ultimate place. And then we chat about how we can make that into like at the moment, I'm working more with kind of sigils and glyphs, simple symbolic stuff. But I guess that, I mean, in the long term, man, I would like to run that out into, if I could sit with a day with somebody, it wouldn't matter. There would be less pressure.
Totally.
At the moment, because I have a short time frame, there's a little bit more pressure on me internally. To produce something. Like, cool. Like, here we
they're
go.
here and we got this time. Yeah.
But if I have a day with somebody, it's much easier to say, hey man, like, let's draw on you. Let's do some sketching. Let's stand in the mirror together. Let's think about which way we can go with this. but I really do think that intuitive is a lot stronger than going with a formula of, oh yeah, well, I like this guy's work, and I like this guy's work, and I like this thing he did, and make me something to go on my chest. And then we're already predetermining exactly which way we're going to walk. And like I say, I am pushing myself a little bit, and it just doesn't always feel comfortable. Um, but, but, but the results are good. The results are good. And
Yeah.
I'm in that space. There's no escape. Those insecurities and those things that are coming up inside myself, I have to, yeah,
Yeah.
you got
It's
to
very
push through.
real.
You have
It's
to be
very
there
real.
for the person.
Yeah.
Um, so those are good, but I really do feel the need for larger time frames to work with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
When you can give yourself that time,
yeah,
time's the key with this whole process, really. It's like the more time you can permit, the better, for sure.
yeah,
I found that's changed things for myself.
yeah. But at the moment, it's difficult, man. Like you were saying earlier, like you worked in a shop in Melbourne, and it was nice to be back in that space. And it is a dichotomy because I love the people I work with. My boss is also my friend, uh, and my colleagues are also my friends,
Mm-hmm.
and we have great banter during the day. Um, we have a good support structure between each other, and it's not like I want to move out of that space, but at the same time, I do want a separate private space, so that I can follow this agenda a little bit more closely and honor things a little
Totally.
bit more closely. And I kind of feel like I mean, this is just in the ether, but I kind of feel like it's around the corner. I don't know how it's going to manifest yet, but I can feel it.
Mm.
Um, in the sense that I don't think it's going to be the big deal that I think it needs to be. That makes sense.
Yeah, you can keep
Um,
it small and humble and do your thing.
yeah, not even that. I think that there's a space. I think that a space will reveal itself when the time is right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, all of those little keys in that walkthrough you gave, um, I think are uh, part of the necessary ingredients. Having that time,
yeah,
being intuitive, I think
yeah,
it really is important. Um, I've been working that way for a couple of years now, where it's literally just, yeah, it has been. I was going to say, unless I'm doing something like Japanese, but I haven't done anything like that recently. Anyway, there's the preparation. I kind of have to hold myself back and know, and I've got to a point where it's very comfortable now, and I'm in trust with it. But people will come in and we work it out and map it out on the day. I'll have a conversation the night before, and I do a lot of drawing at night. In my like when you're
yeah,
asleep, you work a lot of things out,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
That's just part of your cognitive functioning. So I like to see a photo of the person and talk about what's going on for them, and I'll even take in reference if they have it. I'll
yeah,
consume it visually and let myself sort of draw at night, and then the next day it is what it needs to be.
yeah,
And I really trust that process now, and I think that definitely amplifies what's taking place for that person in terms of letting go and trusting, um, and using some language that you've had in one of our emails. I think that's the best way for it to be a vehicle for personal growth.
yeah,
Is that experience, because they're really having to step into something, you know, and cultivate trust in something like bigger than them, you know,
yeah, yeah,
much
yeah,
bigger than
yeah,
them.
for sure.
So it's
Yeah,
an amazing thing. Let's look at, if you don't mind, in this last little bit, we'll wrap it up soon because I've actually got another chat to have in 10 or 15 minutes time. But you said you're doing a lot of sigil work at the moment, which is quite nice. And one of
yeah,
my questions
yeah,
is just talking about your personal practices. of like hermetic magic and even use of medicine, the tarot. They're things that I see you putting up and using in
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
practice. So yeah, how does that all weave in at the moment? I'm sure we need probably another podcast, and I think we definitely should line it up so we can get more deeply into those magical sides, that have aligned with the tattooing eventually. But
Yeah, for
just to
sure, dude.
touch on it and start that convo, yeah,
I'd be amped. Yeah, like, so I guess that, like, if I have any formal study, it would be the Western mystery tradition, or like the sort of Kabbalistic framework. Um, and I've been working with tarot for many years, and tarot from a Kabbalistic point of view as well.
okay, yeah,
Um, how that plugs in is, uh, I guess it's just language, man. I
mm,
really think that it is just, like, what do they call, like, layman's terms for Kabbalah would be like a map of the human soul, or a map of
framework,
the human
yeah,
experience. Yeah, a framework to hang things on, uh, and just a sort of a catalog or encyclopedia of symbols, numbers. So and tarot plugs into exactly the same thing. So when you're seeing things coming up for people, or you're seeing like an elemental association, so you're looking at swords, you're looking at intellect and the mind. It's just it's a nice, I'm definitely downplaying and minimizing it and abbreviating it, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a nice, and especially for people who are not in that way of life at all. Like I say, I don't push any kind of agenda onto anybody. Um, but it is a nice language to be able to hang things on for people, to
hmm,
allow them to make sense of symbology. Like, why are we using the number 2 in the tattoo? Or why are we using the number 6 in the tattoo? Or what does that mean? How do we relate that to ourselves? And being able to weave a story. Tarot is very much storytelling.
yes, yes,
It's how you tell the story. So it's like, how do I take somebody's story and tell it back to them in a way that has a lot more mystical import than describing yourself walking down the street, you know.
yeah, yeah,
So it's a good feedback vehicle. Um, that's my true passion, in terms of study. Everything else that I have is just to bastardize white man's version of other people's events. And because I've never met a shaman in my life. So in terms of shamanism, it would very much be on the neo side of things.
hmm, hmm,
But I haven't worked with plant medicine since I've moved to Ireland, because it's not legal here. But I felt like the need for just a long period of integration to kind of process all of that stuff. I find that the ayahuasca training can very much be, people just get obsessed. And then as soon as the sort of 3-4 month half-life wears off, "Oh, I've got to drink again. I've got to drink again." And I had to sit and take a long look at myself and go, am I doing the same thing?
hmm,
Do I need to top it up? And if I need to top it up, then how much value does it have?
yeah. Why
So
am I doing it?
integration became a way more valuable than the experience. And just timed out nicely with my move here, because I just needed some time to process. I hadn't ever had that experience. And then you find people who've never had that experience in your life, and then you want to do it every 2 or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then how much time are you giving yourself to just process that level of sort of downloading?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah. So I don't work with, I still do work with, like Cambo's quite a big love of mine.
Okay. Yep.
Cambo's
hmm,
frog medicine.
hmm,
Um, But I also find that when you touch base with those things, you understand that shamanism is not, uh, or the tools that are available to the shamans are not unique to shamans. It's While study under somebody who has got lineage and vast wealth would be amazing for me. If I don't have access to that, uh, the potential to discover aspects of those modalities on your own it's there. You can pick up a drum, and you can learn how to journey. pick up a rattle and you can learn how to journey. There's no gates and there's no gatekeeper to stop you doing that. It becomes a little bit iffy once you start calling yourself a shaman and walking up there and trying to interact with people on that level when you have no schooling or foundation.
Yeah, completely.
Up to the snake oil again. But so when it comes to stuff like shamanism or kind of Eastern philosophy, it's what I've read, and it's based solely on my personal experience.
Yeah.
But I could prefer to be upfront about that stuff. It's like I have no aspiration to be any kind of crazy neo shaman. I have enough to go on, man. Like tattooing is enough to unpack for the rest of my life.
Totally. And just to draw some correlation between that integration piece, because that's really important. That's one of the principles too. When I look at kind of what's underlying the experience, it's like the same thing can happen with tattooing as with drinking. It's like people can start getting tattooed and having these experiences, and they just want to just keep getting tattooed and can get covered really, really quickly without any integration between, which is why I'm always encouraging people to take their time with their tattoos, and the more we can remove the need for money from the experience of getting tattooed, which is quite hard at the moment. I'm not saying we should, but it's like the less that as an artist you have a need to get people through the door, the more you can sort of like find that balance, the more you can sort of drop in that space and really feel into, again, that the energy behind the person receiving and be like, okay, does there need to be a little bit more time between sessions for this person? Because I think it is, and it should be a lifetime sort of process getting your work done, right?
Yeah, that's interesting, man. That's interesting because it's a cold day in hell before any tattooer goes, no, I don't think you should get another sleeve.
I know, right? But then, and again, not to sort of say there's any right or wrong way necessarily, because everyone's on their own path, But I see a lot of people that are like super heavily tattooed at such young ages. I'm just like, I wonder, like, how much is getting locked in at such a pre-formed stage of themselves,
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. But mate, I'm going to leave it at that for this interview. I'm so happy we connected. I'm so happy we connected. It's really good.
Yeah, me too, man.
Really, really happy to hear about what you're doing. And again, I really sort of applaud you and respect everything you're doing. For those that are listening, I'm going to put some links up to Sean's work, and just to, let you all know and link back into that piece on technical abilities as one side of it, and the more occulted side as the other. Sean does really beautiful work. He does amazing tattoos technically. So I just want to sort of give you that nod, mate. I really like the work that you're doing. And I'm glad that you're leaning more heavily into the intentional side of it too, because I think it's really needed. We need good artists that are doing things in a very genuine way. So
yeah, dude. And thank you, man. Thanks. I just want to say thank you for knowing or unknowingly being that little prod of encouragement across the last few years, man. So you always seem to touch base with me at the right time. I don't know why.
Yeah, cool. There's only a small number of people around doing what we're doing, so I just try and stay in touch. It's great, man. Yeah, cool. Thank you again for your time. Maybe you can just give people a bit of a direction to what your social links are and tags. I'll put them underneath anyway. But
yeah, cool. Because no one ever gets it verbally. Because I picked the greatest tongue twister of all time. So it's just Electric Hermetic on Instagram, and then it's electrichermetic.inc on the web.
Cool.
That one's been up since July, and I've never put the link to it anywhere. So
yeah, I couldn't find it.
That's COVID.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'll put some links up, and
I'll send you a link, dude.
Yeah, nice. If anyone wants to chat to Sean more, just shoot him a message. And if you're in Dublin or around and you want to get some work done, definitely hit him up. And yeah, mate, we'll be in touch soon. We'll get another one happening when time permits.
Awesome. Much love to you, bro.
You too, man. Thank you.